Γεια σου, καλώς ήλθες σε ένα ακόμα επεισόδιο του podcast με αυτό το παιχνίδι του χρήματος. Σήμερα το κάνουμε στα αγγλικά και αυτό. Έχω τη χαρά και την τιμή να έχουμε μαζί τον Rob Follows και τον Vince Willis. Μια πάρα πολύ μεγάλη εταιρεία έχει κάνει ο Rob, την STS Capital. Όπου ακούτε τη λέξη M&As, σημαίνει συγχωνεύσεις και εξαγορές. Πάμε να ανακαλύψουμε πώς μπορεί κάποιος πραγματικά να κερδίσει πάρα πολλά χρήματα μέσα από μια εταιρεία. So, it's nice to have you here after the Greek introduction. These podcasts, we always start them with the people who are here. Just tell a bit of their story, you know, how they started, if they had an employee mindset or entrepreneurial mindset. How did you start in the beginning? Because now it's very good to talk about success and where about your Everest, but we need to know the first steps because most of our audience are young people who want to know more about the right game of money. So, Rob, if you wish to start.
Sure. You mean where did the business start, or my path, my whole path from starting as a young entrepreneur?
I would like from a young entrepreneur.
Okay. My first business was when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a lawn cutting and pool cleaning business. And we got so many contracts that we would hire the other students for 75 cents an hour, and we would have a $20 contract, and we had some margin, you know. So that's how we started, and then
your parents were entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, my father was an entrepreneur, and so to fast forward, when I was 18, my father said, "You must take over my business. It's a family business."
Okay.
And the Europeans, who he was, all his supply was in Europe, and he was selling, were Canadians selling to the Americans. And so machinery, packaging machinery and technology and packaging machinery it developed into. You must take over the business, he said. And I said, no, Dad, I don't want to take over the business. I don't like machines. I like people and ideas. He said, well, he called me lots of names. He was very strong and said, you will take over the business or I'm cutting you off. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, you now get no money. I said, well, you're not giving me any anyway. He said, yeah, but now I'm not going to pay for your school. I said, I think I have a scholarship. But anyway, and school is not very expensive in Canada because it's centrally funded by the, you know, the government. So, but he wrote me out a bill for $20,000 and then the interest rate was 18%. He gave me the bill and said, you pay that, start installments immediately. So he created an entrepreneur because I was bartending at night, even though I was underage. And that wouldn't make me enough money. So I went out west in Canada. It's like to the you know, the remote areas where they would do tree planting. If the worst came to worst, you could do tree planting, which makes, I needed to come home with $10,000 to pay for my school.
Okay.
And I was 18 years old. And so what happened was I got a job selling wholesale produce in a town called Banff, Alberta, Canada, beautiful town. And I sold too much produce, so the company went bankrupt. And the finance, after I got my money, I learned a big lesson on how to get money from somebody going bankrupt at 18. That's to certify all the checks and then trade, which I learned from my mentors there. And then the financer, the woman who was running the finances, went to a marketing services agency. And she called me and said, Rob, please come and work with us. You can make $2,000 a week. And for me, $2,000 a week was a lot of money.
Back when?
Well, I don't think I should go all the way and tell you the date.
That's understand how much is the 2,000?
It's a while ago. Yeah. So
before millennium.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. A couple decades before. So I ended up joining that company. I grew in the company, working with them, and then I was going back to university. So I took the business to Toronto, which is the capital of business in Canada, and I started doing it in university. And then as I grew, the suppliers said, I'll never forget the day the suppliers came to me and said, look, we can't supply you anymore. And I said, why? And they said, it's too big, but we'll give you $1 million. There was 10 of them each in credit. I was very young. I was in my 20s, early 20s. If you stop, you know, working with the guy you're with and you become independent, and then we'll fund you, but your business is bigger than his now. So Bill was the name of my boss at the time. So I called Bill and I said, Bill, we've got this problem. He said, no problem. Let's play a game of pool for the company. I said, okay. So we played a game of pool at my house. Of course, I would win. That was an important game.
Okay.
And so I got the business.
What's for real?
That's AIM. Yeah, that's what happened. And it became, and I started working very, very hard to grow the business to pay for my school. And I wanted to go and travel. And I grew it one customer at a time, and it became the largest independent marketing services advertising company in Canada by the time I was 29 years old. At that point, somebody tipped me off. Free trade is coming, and you're going to be in a North American free trade zone. They're going to wipe out your business. So get on an airplane and go and see the biggest people. And so I went to see the strategic buyers myself. I tried to find somebody to help, and I couldn't. So I went to see the strategic buyers, 3 of them, with one of my father's friends. I paid, $3,000 a day. It was a lot for me then, but I needed somebody with gray hair to take me to see these people. Anyway, I sold the business for 27 times EBITDA to Merit Sync out of St. Louis, Missouri. I was so thankful, so thankful. And I was very young. By the time it closed, I was 30 years old. And so, but then when I started, I decided I would work for the company, even though I was entrepreneurial. It was a very big company with 22,000 employees.
It was part of the deal for you to stay there?
They wanted me to stay, but I didn't have to stay.
Okay.
That's a great question for deals later. Anyway, I stayed, and I learned they would have paid 100 times EBITDA for my business.
Okay.
So there's 3 reasons we launched STS. One was to help people find the 100 times EBITDA, the real value of their business as entrepreneurs grow their businesses. 2, I knew by then, in doing my own personal life planning, I wanted to create as much philanthropic capital as a contribution to the world as I could, and helping entrepreneurs and families sell their businesses for the maximum value. That 100 times, not the 27, not the 5 that people said it was worth, will help people be free to create philanthropic capital and impact. And then thirdly, I love connecting people. It's my dharma. It's another life planning process to make their dreams come true. And that's really what good win-win mergers and acquisitions is about, is having a win for the buyer and a win for the seller. But we always represent the sellers and help make sure they get their true value in selling to a strategic. That's how the company was born. That's my background.
So one question, and I'm coming to you. So you found out about the philanthropic part of you and the Dharma one, the connecting back then at 29, or before that? You knew it before?
I did most of my personal work. I worked very, very hard through my 20s building up the business. It went from one person to the largest in the industry in Canada, in offices across the country. And I was going to undergrad school. Then I worked for a few years. Then I went to law school at the same time I was doing it. So and then later I took a not-for-profit degree as well. And after that, which I'll tell you, I was in a PhD program at Oxford when I decided to launch in the business school on philanthropy, when I decided to launch STS.
Okay, thank you. So, what's your story?
It's funny. I'm sitting here with my good friend, and it's always fun to do these type of things because the commonalities I hear of like family business, paying for school, dharma, like these things, I'm like, wow, like I've known it, but you don't hear a package like that. So similar to Rob, I was always really close to my dad. My dad grew up extremely poor, not in the best either financial or emotional type system. And he had this courage, especially after he met my mom, to go to college, and he became an accountant. And then he would have these businesses that he would kind of get involved with. And the first one, I think I was 8 or 9 when I first started working with him. And he had a fireplace equipment store. I remember crawling around on the racks and underneath because I was small to take all the...
You grew up where? In which?
I grew up in the United States around Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. And of course I was small. I could crawl around and take the inventory tags, and we would do that. And then, I had a paper out as well. And then he ended up buying a family restaurant that served like Philly cheesesteaks and those type of things. And I remember being 12, and that's what I wanted to do. So we'd be playing pickup baseball in the park in the neighborhood, and my watch would beep and I'd go to work. And I just loved it. I just really enjoyed creativity and working with my dad and making money for it. It was nice being...
So you went there after school, daily?
We'd have my brothers, and I have 2 brothers. We'd have to mop the floors and stuff. But during the summers, I would just go. I really liked it. It was really fun. And then that led to when I was a sophomore in high school. So I was just able to drive. I had 2 jobs. One was selling balloons to supermarkets. But the other one was I went to work for a restaurant down the street. And I'll never forget, I went to a high school that was pretty prominent in Philadelphia. And the owner was what typical guy that didn't trust anyone. And he's like, I went for the interview, and he goes, go downstairs and pull up a bag of onions and peel them. So I did. And then he said, go do another one. And I did. So then he hired me. And by the end of that summer, he was taking vacations, and I'm 17 years old running a restaurant by myself, this small restaurant, and just learned a lot. And I saw really early the power of investing. So what I always wanted to do was become an investor. Like, so I really thought about like how to take something and make more out of it than you have. And then I had this through college, and I would go back and I would work, and I always had something entrepreneurial going on.
So what did you study in college?
So in college, I studied a combination of liberal arts and accounting. So I graduated. I was really lucky. I took the American CPA exam in the pig barn at the Indiana State Fairgrounds and passed it when I was still in school. So I was a CPA, and I went to work for Deloitte. And I spent enough time there to be able to get a CPA license after 1 year with an MBA. And then I worked for a company and put their first computer system in. And then I went back and got an MBA, and that was great. I went to Harvard and then had the opportunity to do research there on a food business, more like how the food system was going to work, called agribusiness. That was super fun. And that eventually helped out because I was on my way to going to New York. I went to law school as well. And I was going to go to New York and do investments for Verizon back when they were starting to do internal M&A. And my dad had gotten into something else that was getting into a little bit of trouble, to be really candid. And working with that process I'd built at Harvard, we took over that company, and it was really fun. We built it from like 700,000 of revenue and 30 employees. And when I left, I think we had 128 million of revenue and 10,000 employees, and had built a trade association and had built a lot of stuff. And that's what I've been able to do, like continue to invest in and build businesses throughout my career.
Okay. And before we go to the M&A business, how did you two meet each other, since you are both here?
Yeah, we got really lucky. We're both in YPO, and we were able to meet through a forum, which is the YPO kind of confidential way of connecting. And we both also...
YPO is an organization?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's the Young Presidents Organization.
Okay.
So it's a global organization that takes people that are running companies, generally 13 million US turnover or above annually, and puts them together in a group that helps you learn, really. It's really about your developing your learning. And we have a lot of fun along the way as well. Okay. But it's global. So we had a connection through that, and that's how we got together in one of their forums.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I will start from some simple questions and then go to the juicy ones. In Greek mentality, since ever, we have a lot of small and medium businesses here. You know, 1 person, 2 person, 10 person. Most of them are family businesses that pass from generation to generation. And for the Greeks, it's very hard to imagine that I will sell my business. So first question, is everything for sale? Second question, for the last, let's say, 10 years, some companies in Greece have started to be sold to bigger companies or to funds or so on, because even the fund business in Greece is not so old. So should the business, when I start a business, to make my plan about how will I sell it sometime, or just do the business well and we'll see about this? What's the right mentality?
Well, I'll start first and say that there's a writer in North America called Tom Deans, and he wrote a book called Every Family's Business, and Tassos has some of those books here. I brought a suitcase full for him. And his suggestion is every family ought to consider selling the business every generation. And so to answer your question, and I agree with it, I think that either selling it to the children for very good terms, but very officially selling it to the children, giving them credit, but then it's clear the purchase is done, and the father and the mother are now...
That sounds provocative to a lot of Greek, because Greek family is very strong.
Well,
but I see the point.
I think they should consider reading the book, because the other alternative is it gets confused with love. Business shouldn't be confused with love, is his point, right? And if it does, then it can cause real problems for the children. So he just does 12 basic questions for the father and the son, or the mother and the daughter, to go through. And the question for the father to consider is, does the children really want to do that business? Or would they rather the business be sold, they get the money and they do something new and preserve the entrepreneurial spirit in the family, which is what the Rockefellers, the story that Tom Deans tells the Rockefellers did. So that is the reference in the background. I think every family should consider selling their business. And that is, but not in all cases, but that would be the recommendation. Maybe all the children go off and do their own thing. Maybe the business goes into a trust. We all will die one day. Yes. And although the human condition is not to think about that, planning for succession, I think, is really important in business.
Okay.
Yeah, you had two really good questions in there. One is, what's the motivation when you start a business? And then, how do you think about the Greek perspective when you never sell it, you hold it forever? And I guess my philosophy has always been, when you start a business or you do anything, you just do it well. And if you do it well and people want things and it creates value, just like Rob being able to do $20 contracts with 75 cents an hour labor, when you create value, there's going to be something you can do with it. And then you have optionality. So I'm not a big fan of start with the end in mind. I'm more of a big fan of solve a problem, create value and run it really well. And then you'll have optionality at the end. And then one of the reasons I'm so excited to be able to work in Greece is because of the honor and the tradition and how things matter here. And sometimes when we think about transactions or selling a business, people focus on the money, right? But it's really more about legacy and continuity and stewardship, because now you've created this thing for yourself, for your family, for your employees, for the customers you serve. And the question becomes, what's the best thing to do? So people see that as an ending. A lot of times it's just the beginning of whatever's next, both for you and your company. So I think as we work in Greece and you see these transactions happening, I'll be really curious to learn if, in some ways I have such respect for the heroic people that say, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. But I wonder if there was a way that they could have both, that the company would continue to survive and they could go on to their next Everest or their next chapter. Maybe that would be a good outcome. So I'm excited for that.
Okay, so I run my business. I know the deals you do now are much bigger, but my questions at first will be from ground level. So first of all, should I do an evaluation of my company every year just to know where my company is? Yes or no? Second question, when is the best time to sell my company? Just go to a certain point, what's the best time to sell my business? If there is one answer to this.
So we suggest people think about it in terms of vision first. So if you set out, we're talking about personal development, setting out a life goal that selling your business would support or not, right? Depending. And so setting that goal first would help you determine when the right time to sell the business is. You definitely want to sell the business while it's continuing to grow, but at the point where it'll support your life goal would be my suggestion. Instead of starting with deal dynamics, start with a vision for your life that's supported by a deal vision of, a deal transaction, and then supported by the required and preferred outcomes that you need to meet your goals. And that will help you understand when to sell the business. If you drew a line of your life and you know what you're going to be doing for the next few decades, but then does that mean that you would want to continue running the business, or do you want to sell the business and do other things while the business is carried on by somebody else? Those are the kind of questions that lead to the timing decision.
So because it's M&As, most of people think it's about the acquisition. So I sell my whole company. So sometimes if I really like what I do and it's part of my life plan, maybe I can sell part of it.
There's two other options. You can sell the whole thing, or you could decide that one of your required outcomes, so somebody that we'll be visiting with in Dubai this coming next weekend wants to sell but stay on. It's a construction company. They want to keep staying on. And
as a shareholder or as an employee?
Both. So they'd stay on as the CEO, but they would keep a percentage of the business. They would roll some of the equity, so they might keep 10% of the business. But the person who owns the 90% will grow the business and then start to build a leadership team that will take all the knowledge from the entrepreneur when they're willing to lead.
So this is part of the deal for him to stay for a couple of years, or he wants to stay?
No. Well, so the way to answer that question is to have required outcomes that you agree to and you write down before you go into a transaction, and preferred outcomes. If the required outcome is you want to stay, then you only go to buyers that will let you stay. And then if the required outcome is you leave and you're free immediately, which a lot of people say they want to be when they get into it, then you only bring buyers to the table to let you be free. And so if some people say, I'll only stay if somebody's values are aligned with mine as the buyer, and I like them and I like their style, or if like the Japanese, they would leave me alone. Japanese owners leave the management alone generally to operate it, then that would be a required outcome for me. It would meet my goals. So it depends on the goals you have, and you can build those into a filter for the kinds of buyers you bring to the table.
Okay, so you have some kind of system that this owner can rely on and think about what he really wants.
Yeah, do you want to talk about value mix?
Yeah, we have both. As Rob said, we have a very structured process to help people go through this. We've done it a lot, so we know, kind of what works as a process. So even like coming up with your desired and preferred outcomes clarifies a lot. And then a lot of times we get involved with businesses that need support. They're not ready to have a sale that lines up with that vision. So we have a process called Value Max. So Value Max will we'll get involved with someone and basically do consulting to help them shape a story that will get to a value that'll lead to their vision, which is really important. The other really cool part of what you asked is, when's the time, what's right? And there's a lot of different versions of that, but I will say one thing. It's really rare for a business to get more than $1 million US of turnover. It's really rare to get more than 5 million of turnover. And to hit 10 is extraordinarily rare. So one of the things I've learned in my own personal journey, you talk about growth, is the things that I did that made a business successful to get over the $1 million hurdle and the $5 million hurdle, somewhere start becoming the problem. Right? Because it takes a different thing to scale. And I call it the $10 million inflection point.
The problem for your mentality or for the system that you used to have to go there? Okay.
For the skill sets that are required. Because, when you're young, you're early, you're kind of muscling it through and one person really can do it. But then you're leading a team and then you have much more complex systems you're working in. And just on an enjoyment level, I have a lot of conversations with entrepreneurs about, do you enjoy this? Like, is this really something that you want to do? Or is this something you feel like you have to do? Or there's some other thing? And there's very few people that can do both, effectively start something and effectively scale something. So we have a lot of conversations with folks about, are you happy? Is this the best thing? And it doesn't mean you have to sell your company. It just means you might have to come up with a better leadership style or a different leadership style in organization. But the truth is, a lot of people that are really good at starting companies could never let anyone else run them. So at the end of the day, they decide to sell.
Okay. So some of the common mistakes that you see through this procedure?
Sure, I'll go first. Okay. Sure. So some of the common mistakes people make, probably the most common is to not understand the difference between strategic buyers and financial buyers. So because it's confusing. In the marketplace, they both present themselves as strategic.
Okay.
But financial buyers are private equity, venture capital, special purpose acquisition companies, funds, strategic operating funds. They call themselves merchant banks. They call themselves all different things. But what they're doing is using other people's money for the most part. And they're trying to buy assets. They're not operators, they're financial people. And they're trying to buy your company for as low a price as they can so they can resell it later to a strategic buyer or to another private equity that sells to a strategic buyer. So the problem with that is to be effective and successful as private equity or as VCs, they have to buy well. And what buying well means is buying low. And what that means is, as an entrepreneur or a family, when you go to sell, you want to sell for the maximum price, but they want to pay the minimum price. So when you're dealing with financial buyers, even though it looks nice and they tell you a lot of good stories, a second bite of your own apple, by the way, it becomes a conflicted interest situation where where they're trying to buy low, you're trying to sell high, and they have a lot of tricks and they're very good negotiators.
So when you are in really need, you can go there, but when you want to sell at a good price, it's not the best option.
Well, if I was an entrepreneur with everything I know now, I would never go anywhere near venture capital, private equity, merchant banks, because they're smart. They have money, but they also have many, many, many hooks with the money that the entrepreneurs don't understand. And we see horrible outcomes many times where we have to say, I'm sorry, you don't have control over your company anymore. I know you want to sell it, but you can't sell it even though you want to. You're now working for the financial investor that came in, even though it was years ago, because it sounded good, but you didn't get all of the clarity on the limitations. On the other hand, you have strategic investors, which these financial investors are buying low, building, putting debt on, et cetera, and then flipping it to strategic investors. So the message we have for entrepreneurs is you too can sell to strategics. You don't have to sell to private equity that sells to strategics. So you need to grow the business to a size where it is going to be of interest to a strategic buyer. And then you need to understand, what is it about your business that will integrate into a strategic buyer? If this is your business and this is the strategic buyer, what is their view of integrated value of your business with all of its strengths and all of its features? So a strategic buyer, to clarify, will often pay 200% more than the first bid that you're getting from a financial buyer.
Why?
Because they make more money. That's a great question. Because they make more money owning the business than you do. So if you have a fabulous product in Greece and you think the worldwide
because
market,
they're already in the business, so they can scale it.
Right.
Okay.
Or yes. So if you have a product, let's say, that is something that say IBM was the buyer, or it's a product that, we were talking about Nestle. Nestle might be the buyer. If they were to buy it and integrate it, gives it immediate distribution, right?
Because of their brand or
because of the distribution channels.
Okay.
Yeah. And then another one might be intellectual property. We talked about lots today, and that would be that you might have some fabulous intellectual property as the entrepreneur that you've developed, but it doesn't have global application, or it's not attaching to other operating systems, and so the buyer might be able to give it.
And maybe they can develop it on their own, but they buy time by acquiring
absolutely and risk. So their risk
it already works.
If it's already proven, they will pay extra, much more than develop their own, because the risk factor is gone and the speed to market is more.
Okay, so you go in, so they don't have to go to a financial buyer.
Right.
They can scale, and you can find the strategic partner for them.
Yes.
Buyer. Okay.
And as Vince was explaining earlier with the ValueMax, we can start a year, sometimes 18 months before they might be ready to sell, to help them get ready. But they give us the mandate then, so we celebrate together when we sell, if it's 2 years down the road. But we work with them now on developing the right applications, business, strategies and products that will appeal the most to the strategic buyers. Help them get polished up and ready to go.
Okay, but if they're ready, you can just take it and go to the
immediately,
to the buyer. Okay, and
you have to make a list of all the global strategic buyers, and you want people in Japan, you want people in North America, and the Nordics, and the Middle East, and in South America. Wherever it's an application, where remember the strategic buyer will make more money than you do owning the business.
Do you want to add something on this? Or?
It's up to you. I will say one thing. We both sold businesses. All of our partners have started and sold businesses. So that's the perspective we bring. And obviously there's been some success, but there's also been a lot of learning through failure as well. So I like to think about what I didn't know then that I know now.
Okay.
And one thing in the answer to your question is, I didn't understand the game, right? Like every game we play, whether it's American football, European football, basketball, has rules.
Oh, yes.
And in the game of selling your company, the rules aren't really set for you to win as the seller, right? In general, most people will be really lucky to sell one business in their whole life. The people in the system buy and sell companies for a living. And that game is rigged to really, at the end of the day, serve that master, right? So one of the things, like if you're using one of the London banks or one of the New York type banks, they're doing their job. I'm not being critical of that. but that job is not to maximize your value. And one of the things I really enjoy about STS is that's all we do is sell companies, and realize that in general, we're selling the one thing that this family will ever get to sell. So I think part of the things I wish I knew then, and the reason people kind of make mistakes, is they just don't understand the game. And the game has a lot of messages that are designed to keep the game going. So you got to have someone that can help you really get through the marketing.
Okay, one of my...
Can I also answer your question on mistakes people make? Often people get approached by a financial buyer, and the financial buyer does not want them to have representation. And you know why? They don't want a professional negotiator on the other side. So people make a mistake of trying to do it on their own. And it's a big mistake, as people often, this is a very
So if you had yourself as a consultant back then, you would sell 100 times more?
Right.
Okay.
If I had the right one, exactly. If I had have had the right representation, I would have got a lot more for my company, because the buyer was willing to pay it, but I didn't know how, and neither did the support I have know how to get to that.
People don't want to pay the money because they have the buyer already, so they just say, I will do it myself.
Exactly, and that's a huge mistake. People like us make our fees many, many, many times over, you know, maybe 50 times over or more. But the decision they make, exactly, because somebody is approaching them, and they're very smart people, so they have lots of great stories. But the bottom line is, if somebody is approaching you to buy your business, you need help. You need somebody to represent you that's independent, that's going to work for you and nobody else. And there's a lot of advisors that are specialists in industries that'll work for the buyers, even though they're taking the contract from you. So whether it's STS or someone else, you want to hire an independent group that will represent you on the sell side and never works on the buy side and never works for private equity.
And of course, I should assume that you work with success fees. So you want the best price for the seller, so you can also get paid more.
That's right. Yeah, alignment of interest.
Yes. So I like very much the word game, and this is called the game of money, you know. What is money for you?
For me, it's an energy. Money is energy.
Okay. For what?
To fulfill the opportunity, depends on the intention of the person that's coming through, right? So if your intentions are abundant, and if you have abundance as your paradigm and not scarcity as your paradigm, in abundance you can create lots of beautiful things with money. If scarcity is your paradigm, then you're playing a win-lose game, a zero-sum game, then money won't develop and become as...
So if I have a successful company that makes a lot of money and I enjoy it being there, why should I sell it?
Maybe you don't.
Okay.
You will die one day. We all will. And so as you prepare for the time you're going to die, and as I would encourage you in that question to draw your lifeline and decide, I'm going to live till May 31st, 2081 at 5 p.m. Okay. And at 5 p.m., May 31st, 2081, I'm going to be transitioning. So all of us have a day we're going to pass on. And if we choose that day, we can have some influence on it. If we don't, things will happen and we will die. But drawing a lifeline to the time you think you're going to die, and then looking back and thinking, okay, what do I want to do in the different areas of my life? I created a wealth wheel for Tiger 21. Say that's just 8 different areas you could set goals in your life. What are you doing in your life on those 8 different areas? And financial is only one of them. So financial generally can support all the rest. So many entrepreneurs work very, very hard and don't have balance in the other life planning objectives. And so perhaps if you've got a great business and you're doing really well, you might want to draw the line on for how long you want to be doing that versus maybe other things in your life.
And I think it's important what you said before, because many entrepreneurs, also in Greece, they say that they keep doing it for their kids, and sometimes just sell it and give some money to your kids. It's better than give them a business.
So you know what one of my friends told me? Rob, you don't understand children. Do you know how they spell love? I said, no. They said T-I-M-E. Give time to your children. Are you giving enough time to your children? Because many entrepreneurs don't give time to their children. They think giving them money is going to make up for that. It doesn't.
Have you balanced this?
Have I? You'd have to ask my children.
Okay. How old are they?
8, 12, 16, and 21.
Okay.
22 now.
Okay, perfect. So what's money for you?
We have a similar philosophy. So to me, money's energy. And I kind of think of it more like flow. And then to your question about, well, what do you do with the flow? I think it just depends. I know in my own life, I think it's general. If you look like a hierarchy of needs perspective, in the beginning, it's can I eat? Can I have money? Like, I think I had 300,000 of debt when I graduated from school. Like it was important for me that my children grew up without that set of dynamics on top of them. Not that they're not beneficial.
It's the pyramid of needs, that's to eat and survive.
Yeah, for sure. And so then you get to a point, like, what are you going to do? Like, what's your timeline? So I'm at a point now in my life where I don't really have need for money physically anymore, right? Like if somebody dropped $1 billion in this room today, I'd still be sitting here talking with you. I'd still be partners with Rob. I'd still be doing what I'm doing.
So it's true what they say, that when you have enough money, money is not the issue.
Well, no, it's true, right? It's hard to know that when you're young, but it's probably never been the issue. Like you asked Rob a great question earlier about, was Dharma part of his life when he was younger, or did he come to it when he was 29? I believe he knew all along. I think we're kind of born with that. And in some ways...
But it's not conscious.
You can't express it even if it's conscious. But, as human beings, we can't survive without people that take care of us. And some of taking care of those people kind of separates you from some of those things. And I know it did for me. And then you come back together. So I think now the purpose of money is to propel humanity. Like everything I do, I want it to make it better for some human or some group of humans on some little or small scale. And that equally feeds me. My daughters are 23 and 22. I ended up raising them by myself, which really pivoted my career in a way that I didn't expect. And probably when I was younger, I was mad.
From which age did you?
Formally, since they were probably 12, but informally more since they were 7. I remember we had just bought a company. I was in the Minneapolis airport and I was loving it. I was young and I was energetic and I was building a company. I was walking out of a men's room and out of the right corner of my eye, I caught myself and I stopped and I looked and I realized, to Rob's point about time, I can't give enough time to my job and enough time to my kids, and I have to pick. So I picked the kids. And, back then I was probably disappointed, or I had this idea that something would be different. But truthfully, I'm not sure he and I would be sitting here. He might be here, but I don't think I'd be here with him if it had gone that way. So I think these things are just lessons that we learn in life. And I know for myself, on everything that comes up, I think, well, why is this here? I do better than when I try to control it. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, because as I told you before, I also run a lot of businesses. Now I have 3 young daughters. They are 8, 6, and 4. And I have this type of thinking almost daily, about how much time I spend with them, how much I travel, how much I give the business. I think for men, it's an infinite type of self-thinking. Okay.
Yeah, struggle. Yeah, right. It's hard.
Okay.
So I was thinking about your question of am I spending enough time with my kids? I think if you asked them, they'd say no, but I don't think there's ever enough. But that's because I spend time with my wife, right? Who I really like.
That's also important.
Yeah, and it's hard for us to find time away from the kids, Being single again.
I can feel you.
Not as fun as you might think.
Yeah. So but balancing also your physical health is really important. You look quite healthy. So, wealth is all kinds of wealth are important until you're sick and you think then there's only one.
Yes, and in order to keep going on and succeed to what you want, you also need your physical body. This is the vehicle to be healthy and productive.
Yeah.
What's so interesting too when you talk about like the kids and isn't enough, right? Because we all try this parenting thing for the first time. We don't get a second rodeo unless you're a grandparent, right? And then you get to do it over, and then you have different control rights. But I've come to the conclusion, like the best things you can do is do what's authentically right for you, because that teaches them to do what's authentically right for them, which is, I think, as a parent, is what I really wanted.
That's really important. Yes.
My father taught me to work hard by example, so I work really hard, but that's a habit that I have to manage against now, But teaching kids good values around work and not having not expecting things is really important.
Did you take your kids with you back then at some meetings or so?
Yeah. So I'm traveling on this trip. I meet them. I'm going all the way around the world, and I'm meeting them halfway.
Okay.
Yeah, for a month.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll do a month on my own, which is a long time. Normally, I don't travel more than 2 weeks, but I'm going to places I won't normally. We're celebrating a deal close in Kathmandu, which is not something I expected I would do.
Okay. As we talk, I have a lot of personal questions. So since money is not the issue, how would you define success? So Rob, you have climbed a lot of mountains as my team. So why do you do this? First of all, what is success for both of you? Definition of success.
Well, so I'm showing you a wealth wheel here. I think the definition of success for me would be in all elements of wealth, which financial is fine to have enough, and so but not excessive. And then experiential, having set goals in the experiential, side of life and achieving those. As we have fun putting vision boards together of things we want to do as a family, and the kids have them, and my wife has, and we have them together. And then intellectual, staying really intellectually stimulated and continuing to learn. And then, emotional, working through, we all have emotional. You mentioned Eckhart Tolle before. We all have emotional barriers to being in our spiritual centeredness, and so working through our emotional, growth brings a lot of happiness. So all of these types of wealth bring happiness. Spiritually, having your goals in your spiritual development, I think, is really important. And then, et cetera, like on your family, love, and relationships front, and on your physical health and vibrancy, and I've left one out: philanthropic impact goals. So success to me would be, actually, I did a wealth wheel here with my own. On my physical, I was 8. On many of them, I was 9, 9.5. But being 10 on everything, I think, where you've set goals in all areas of your life, you've achieved those.
Can this be done?
Absolutely. Yeah, but it takes hard work, because we're all natural in one or two areas, but getting to the rest of them. And it's also very, very fulfilling. You asked me about climbing Everest and climbing mountains. I was teaching one of the life planning processes to my girlfriend at the time, when we were driving across Mexico, and I'd gotten to a maturity level, which you'll read in my book in the business. And so I had, we'd come to a mutual agreement that I would not work there anymore. And so I flew to Mexico City, where I had a second date with a girl I'd met in London, who was not yet my girlfriend, but we met in Mexico City, and we ended up driving across Mexico. I didn't know what to talk to her about. And she is very beautiful. So I said, look, you should understand my life planning process. I just retired, so we could do this work together if you want. So if you had all the time and all the money and all the energy and all the resources in the world, and there were no limits, and you knew you couldn't fail, what goals would you set now for the rest of your life?
Okay.
Right? And then in true to form, put a 5-year date out on that, work it all back. If I'm going to do it all by the end of 5, then by the end of 4, write a business plan at the end of 2, 3, 1. And then how do I start living today as if my dreams really should be part of my life? So I was explaining that. That's my favorite one of my favorite life planning processes, okay? So I was explaining it to Katrina, which is in my book, Going Across Mexico. And we got to the coast where I was playing polo there, a place called Costa Correas. And the sun was setting, and she turned to me, and we hadn't even kissed yet, that I remember. I don't think we had. And she said, "Do you want to go and climb the 7 summits?" And I said, "Well, what are the 7 summits?" And she said, the highest mountain on every continent. And I said, "Oh, well, that would include Everest." And she said, "Yeah." I said, "But don't people die climbing Everest, And she said, "But you said to me," in her very nice British accent, "if you had all the time and money and energy in the world." I said, "I did say that." And she said, "Well, then I'm saying, let's go climb the 7 summits." And I said, "Okay. So we'll set the goal to climb the 7 summits as long as we don't die doing it. We know we're not going to die." And so it was her idea, not mine, but I get stuff done. So we ended up becoming one of the first amateur couples to climb the 7 summits.
Okay. That's also cute.
Yeah.
What they say, a woman is behind every crazy decision.
Yeah. Well, literally, it was her idea, not mine. She's still climbing. I don't climb anymore.
Okay. So I'm still alive, just don't take the risk. Okay. So what about you? Success for you?
I think now, like in the present moment, I just think success is being really aligned with spirit purpose, like why you're here, what your mission is, and doing that as well as I can do it. You know, that's kind of where I am now at 59 years old and having done a lot of other things in my life. And I think we come here and we have these spirits, and we come here really to have fun and to learn and to live a really good life. And one of the nice things in life is to achieve a place where I get to do what I believe I'm here to do. It gives me joy. It helps me help people. And I always struggle I strive for this word I call sovereign, right? Like it's an interesting word, but I view that to mean like in every situation, you have freedom of choice. Like you can make the best choice in spite of whatever's on the media, in spite of what's coming at you from anything outside of you. So that's kind of how I think about success today, being really in alignment with spirit and having fun and joy doing it well.
Again, talking about freedom of choice, we live in very, let's say, strange times. You know, in the US, you have the crazy guy. And since you do business around the globe, around the world, what's your point of view about the economic and geopolitical situation right now? Do you...
Well, I should ask which crazy guy, because we have lots of them. So which one are you referring to?
the Trump one. One of the top.
Yeah. Well, Trump's an interesting phenomenon, right? Because if you go back to when Trump was first elected in 2016, here's this guy that has the following characteristics. He's white. He's East Coast. He's a billionaire. He lives in a world that most people can't even think about. And he wins the presidency after winning the nomination of the party that didn't want him to win. Right? So it seems like something's going on that he's the reaction to. And as I look at it now, it feels like there's just uncertainty, right? Like the word I would say we see mostly now is uncertainty.
In the US or globally? Globally.
But, you know, the US, like the whole world order has been running off a certain model since after the Second World War. And that feels like it's been slowly kind of transitioning to whatever's next. And that's where we are today. So when I look at Trump as a person, I really don't comment, right? Like there's obviously a lot of all humans can do to get better. And he certainly can as well. But the facts are, I think it was almost 6 million people more than, you know, Vice President Harris voted for him. You know, they picked him. In our electoral college, he won a lot of states. And I think fundamentally what's going on is we're coming up with a new world order, right? A new social contract. I mean, we talk about money and all these things. Look what's going on with crypto, right? Like all of these things that we take as being permanent are really just choices.
Are you crypto familiar?
Excuse me?
Are you crypto familiar?
I would say I am first grade familiar in crypto. I've made a couple of purchases and I understand a little bit of, I think I understand more about Web3 and what it's going to do as opposed to what crypto does.
In blockchain and so on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have you done any deal in crypto? Not yet.
We have not gotten paid with crypto in any deal yet. So, you know, like in the United States, I'm 59. So, you know, somewhere late 70s, early 80s, we've had this basic social contract that says, go to college, study hard, work hard, you're going to end up in the middle class. And if you do really well, you're going to end up in the upper middle class. And then there's a few people that make extraordinary wealth mostly through entrepreneurship. That contract seems like it's not going to really exist anymore, right? Because of things like AI, because of nanotechnology, because of quantum physics and quantum computing. So when I think about Trump, it's just the people around him and him, I think, are trying to help the US and the world in some ways get to what's next in as painless a way as possible. But no matter how you do it, it's going to be a lot of pain and disruption. That's what I see at the end of what's going on in America right now.
Okay. And your point of view about the global economics, you know, it's a very uncertain time. Yes.
It is a very uncertain time.
Yes.
But as I was listening to Vince's answer, I think that the question for the Greek entrepreneurs, I think, is, you know, how is this going to impact, like, what does it mean to me, right? And I think that in many industries, it's an inter-industry dynamic in terms of M&A. And so in the industry of alcoholic beverages, where we're celebrating some closes right now, that industry is reducing its, you know, its consumption, and so there's a whole dynamic in that industry, which is influenced by the uncertainty, but uncertainty generally, as it did in COVID, drives the alcohol consumption up, right? So in that industry, there's a very different dynamic than in the consumer packaged goods industry, where you've got a transition to more healthy eating, so that if you have even premium healthy foods, then those are being purchased now by groups that before didn't care very much because the consumer didn't care. So although there's an umbrella of uncertainty and a change in global dynamics from a geopolitical standpoint, in each individual industry is where the entrepreneur needs to consider where they are and how things are being impacted in that industry. A bigger impact for entrepreneurs, I think, is AI. I mean, AI. We were at the TED conference a couple of weeks ago, and to hear the experts talk about where they are on it is much more advanced than, and like the horses left the barn would be my analogy with AI. And so to understand how it, in terms of change and uncertainty, will impact the various entrepreneurial businesses, and to ensure that they're getting as involved as they can on influencing what AI is going to do in their business or industry is really important.
Okay, so AI can do a lot of things really fast and really good. So in your kind of business, you know, an AI model maybe could do the evaluation, the strategy, maybe. But the AI model cannot find the right buyer.
No, it's a relationship based.
It's about networking.
On both sides, it's about trust and relationship equity, right? And understanding the strategic positioning, and that is, a machine can understand what needs to be done, but it can't actually sit down and create the trust that's required to create a deal to be done. So the money transfers but there's lots of background work, the database, the research support, Do
you use any AI models for your?
Well, I'm not personally doing the work, but our teams are doing lots of work with how AI can enhance and support the work.
Okay, and some last questions. I really enjoy it. What's the power of networking for both of you?
The power of what?
Networking.
The first word that comes to mind to me is just joy. Right? There's just a lot of personal gratification and experience. I love hearing people's stories and sharing them. And then if we bring that back to, if I'm a Greek entrepreneur selling my company, networks are really what create all of the options. Like when you look at STS Capital, we have about 5,200 advisors in 41 primary locations around the world. And with that group and the model that we use with that group and we offer that group, we're able to not only find strategic buyers, we're able to have conversations with them at the right level, whether it's the CEO or the board or that. So I think joy for personal and in terms of deals, effectiveness, it all comes down to how well you can network and expand for both yourself and for the deal.
And one advice about the right kind of networking?
Well, first of all, I think networking is really, really important. Young people spend so much of their time on devices and not connecting with other entrepreneurs. And I heard somebody say the other day they were very fearful. They're getting over their fear of going to a conference and meeting people. I think it's, in my experience, I love meeting people, but whether you love it or you don't care or you're afraid of it, you ought to get to a place where if you're an entrepreneur, you can start to network with others that are in your industry and in adjacent industries and in supplier and customer relationships. So that, because relationship equity can take you a long way in circumstances as against not knowing anybody. So I find young people like my kids, for instance, think the people they're meeting online are, legitimate people, and that they're going to make some big mistakes if they're trusting people they don't even see or know. And that'll end up with a negative outcome, which will be a deterrent for doing more of it. So I think people ought to network as much as they can. So your last question on what type of networking, what wasn't it?
What's if networking is good, then how should I do it in a proper way?
How should I do it in a way? So there are many, many organizations developing now because the need is there that you can join and pay a little bit of money to, or a lot of money if you choose. As we're speaking to entrepreneurs and business people, there's many, many, many organizations. As the old Chinese saying reminds us, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? So if you decide, I really want to meet other people in my world, in my business, in my community, in my industry, or adjacent industries, then you start to look for it and it'll start to appear. But don't be afraid to join and go and try it once, and see where you fit. So I belong to so many organizations. People wonder how I can keep it up, but I don't go to all of them all the time, but I am part of them in the ways that I can do that, as opposed to necessarily the way they want me to.
So it's a kind of investment for you.
It is an investment. It is, because time is your limiting resource, right? So we only have 24 hours in a day. So if you choose to do one thing, you're choosing not to do another. So making sure that's an important thing, which gets to intentionality, goals, and life goals, right?
So one last question for both of you. One advice you would give to your kids for the future, for this uncertain future?
Well, I'm going to go with 2.
Okay, no problem.
Love yourself more than anything else and be really good at learning. Like learn how to learn, because the speed at which the cycles are going to continue to accelerate, it's hard to predict what it's going to look like, but if you can learn, you're always going to be able to continue to be involved.
Thank you. Rob?
We create our own worlds, every one of us, and so or co-create. And so whatever you believe God is, right? So having intentionality and vision around the life you're creating for yourself and the world you're creating for yourself and everybody around you is critically important. Probably the most important thing. And we don't learn that in school, and we don't learn it. It's not reinforced in our society at all. And then secondly, the limitations to that are limitations that we give ourselves and we're given by our parents and by society. So coming to understand what your negative subconscious beliefs are and limiting those allows you to connect with your spiritual self, which is the center of yourself, which will bring you the most happiness. So I would suggest that might be a good focus for kids.
So thank you both for your precious time that you shared with us and knowledge, and looking forward to see you again here in Greece. Thank you very much.
When your air conditioning is working.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this podcast too. It's such an amazing service to be able to share this type of information. So many people come up and say, how do I learn about finance? How do I understand money? So it's really great that you spent your time doing this. Thank you.